Welcome back to the BASE Talk podcast. I am your host, Jacob Billingsley, owner and founder of BASE Sports Performance in Hernando, Mississippi. In this episode, we introduce our assistant pitching director, Hudson Ross, and talk with him about his time as an athlete, as an intern, as well as now a full-time coach with BASE. As I mentioned, today we are here with our new assistant pitching director, Hudson Ross. Hudson, welcome to the show, man.
Nice to be here.
All right, so it's been a minute. This is actually the first recording we've ever gotten with you, but you've been here quite a while, man. When was it that you first started? Actually, the listeners don't know, but you were originally an athlete with us prior to becoming an intern and then coming on as staff. When did you originally start as an athlete with us?
Originally started as an athlete here summer 2020, back when it was smaller building. And so I was an athlete from 2020 to 2023.
So that's you mentioned summer of 2020. That was actually when we were still in Senatobia. So Hudson came on when I had just finished playing. I had just finished my playing career, and I decided that I wanted to go into the private sector, go into coaching. And Hudson was actually one of my first athletes that came on, full time. I think that summer it was like you and Tristan Barlow and.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was mainly you two guys.
Yeah, occasional like Tanner or
a
few others.
Few high school kids, maybe a couple middle school kids.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually, do you even remember how did you find us that summer? Did you find us on social media? Did somebody tell you about us? Do you remember how that happened?
So at the end of that spring, I just come off of a tonsillectomy and mono.
Oh.
And needed someone that understood training and understood how to basically get me back to where I was before all that happened. And my sister was working with a personal trainer out in Collierville, and they had your number, and they had been in contact with you before, and so she got that number, gave it to me, and I contacted you, and we set everything up at the very last week of May, and then we started that first week of June.
Yeah. So you were referred to us by another personal trainer in the Collierville area. So you came on summer of 2020 as an athlete. Obviously you've been with us since. Do you remember what was like your first initial thoughts, like when you came in and we had you in the old facility and we were doing, your evaluation on a bench. And for the listeners that haven't been around Hudson's 7 feet tall, literally. And we're doing his evaluation where we're checking his hip range of motion and his joint range of motion and things like that. We're doing it on just a bench, like a workout bench. Because at the time we didn't have training tables to do the evaluation. So
we were on the floor for all the hip mobility. It was like we moved to the bench for all the upper body stuff to get the full range of motion.
Yeah. So when you came in and we went through the evaluation process, and you see the facility that we were working in at the time, which was obviously less than ideal. What were your original thoughts?
I mean, it was interesting. Like, obviously, I'd never been around anything like that. So even though it was smaller, like playing junior college while I was used to a small weight room, high school weight room wasn't too big either. Not like what kids today have. And so, looking at everything, I was just like, okay, small gym, this is going to be a lot more one-on-one to start out. And then once we started working out, it was, I've been lifting and training and stuff basically way too wrong, and understanding more body control was the most interesting part, because nobody ever teaches you that when you lift. It's, hey, you see that bar? Go load it up, see what you can do.
Yeah.
So,
well, I want to get into one of the first points I want to hit is kind of talking about your playing career, but even before that, let's talk a little bit about where you're from. Talk again about like what your new role is here. Where are you from?
I'm from Collierville, Tennessee. Lived there for about 10 years, and then I've been around Germantown, Tennessee. So been really in that suburb of Memphis area, basically all my life. So, and then the role here, assistant pitching director, handling every pitcher from those coming back from arm injuries, shoulders, elbows, whatever it may be, through our college arms, pro arms, high schoolers, middle schoolers, kind of teaching them the right ways to go about things, controlling their throwing schedule a little bit more, getting them on a normal pace, and just helping them move a little bit better and understand the aspects of the game that you and me weren't taught until late into college and even pro ball.
So, you mentioned obviously you're working with a lot of the athletes, working with the return to throw cases, working with the guys that, are maybe in season programs or even postseason programs. Um, you know, what would you say, again, just here working at base, working with the athletes here, what would you say is the biggest thing that has helped you transition from an athlete to a coach to be able to kind of help those athletes and push them in the right direction?
Just understanding that it is a process and that everything we do here has meaning, and doing research, picking brains of people that I've been around, coached by, trained with, um, and interned under and stuff, and picking the brains and understanding and basically elevating my knowledge to then translate it more towards the player's brain, and being more of a player to player and understanding that from a coach to player, you can have that aspect of, yes, I'm the coach and you're the player, but it's easier when you understand that if you treat it more as like you've been in their shoes, you understand what they're going, uh, what's happening to them and everything. It just makes it easier for them to understand. It makes it easier for you to communicate point A and point B instead of having to go with this long-winded story just to get back to a simple point.
Yeah. So, one thing that obviously, you know, came up whenever we were, taking on the idea of bringing you on as a coach was obviously, you trained with us through pretty much your entire college career. You were training with us initially where we were writing, you were a remote program, you were going to a commercial gym while you were in junior college, you were going through that entire strength program on your own, the entire arm care program on your own. You were sending back video for feedback, and it was very detailed. You could tell that it wasn't halfway done. You had taken the time to set up the camera at the right angles to get the right video so we could give you actual feedback. It wasn't, we could tell that it wasn't just a check box for you, right? Like it wasn't just something you were getting done and moving on. You were spending time, you were investing time into yourself and your own career, and again, kind of moving forward with that, like, you and I were kind of, we'd text back and forth and you'd be sending us YouTube videos and things like that of different pictures breakdown. So, my point to that is you could tell that it was more than just a sport and a game to you. Something that you were passionate about, something that you liked learning about, and obviously that was kind of one of the reasons that we, knew that you were going to be a good fit to come on, as a coach. But let's talk about your playing career a little bit. You mentioned you were in junior college. Where did you go to junior college? Where did you, play after that? What did that look like?
I started out in East Tennessee at a junior college called Walter State Community College. It's out in Morristown, Tennessee, and spent, I say 2.5 years because COVID cut my second year short. So had to basically went back for a third, finished there, came back home, and was at the University of Memphis for 2 years. Got my bachelor's degree at the University of Memphis. Still had a year left from COVID, and so I took my grad year and went up to Jonesboro, Arkansas, and just finished up at Arkansas State University for my final year.
And you went to Houston High School, correct?
Yes,
Perfect.
I started at Colleyville High School and transferred over to Houston High School after my sophomore year at Colleyville.
Yeah, so obviously kind of an unorthodox, college career, but again, a lot of the athletes that are going through, the timeline that you did, obviously COVID messed a lot of those things up. It changed around, you know, coaching rosters and changed around playing rosters, changed around, how scholarships were allocated and things like that. And obviously that put a wrench into a lot of people's plans. But being able to play at a couple, some pretty big schools, like the junior college that you played at was and still is a pretty highly leveraged junior college, right? A good
Yeah,
baseball program there.
it's a pretty good powerhouse. The two biggest names out of it are the Ben Joyce and Zach Joyce, who are now with the Angels.
Yeah,
I came in with that class, so that class was loaded with a bunch of guys, a lot of which are now in the minor league system, and so that class was just rich from the get go. So they bring in classes like that, and then ship you wherever you want to go. So
yeah. And then again, kind of moving along, playing at two pretty big Division I schools, both of which that have pretty decent baseball programs, in the University of Memphis and then Arkansas State University. Those were two pretty big schools as well. So, what was your experience like there? And as far as like learning and knowledge, would you say that your experience there and time there as an athlete, has been beneficial in your coaching career so far?
oh yeah, 100%, because every year I've been in college, after junior college, I had a different coach, which not a whole lot of people, really get to say they have. And it is a double edged sword when it comes to that, because you learn and get close with one, and then a new one comes in, you have to restart that process. But the plus side to it is each coach has their different way of doing things, and so it's picking their brain and understanding why they're doing this, what they're teaching, what they're looking for, and it helps you when you get to that point in your life where you start coaching, understand, okay, I want to take this bit that I learned from so and so, this bit from this guy, this pitching coach had all of us do this and it really worked. Let me, I'm going to incorporate that into my stuff and do a little spin on it and what I was thinking in my head when he first said it. And so you learn to kind of take bits and pieces and form it into your own words, and it just elevates your knowledge because you can evolve it and elevate it more because you've used it and actually played under it.
Yeah. Thinking as an athlete, you when you say that, you played, however many years it was, 3 or 4 years of, uh, college baseball under a different coaching staff, as an athlete, you would normally see that as a negative, but obviously now looking back as a coach, it gave you a lot of experience and a lot of opportunity to learn from different types of coaches, and now that obviously that's, your profession, that's your career, you got to see and experience all those different types of coaching. You got to learn how you like to be coached. You got to learn, different personality types through coaches, and you got to see those coaches, communicate with different personality types and different types of athletes as well. So, being able to actually play under all those different types of coaches was probably a pretty big advantage, now as a coach, getting that experience. So that was probably something that's helped a lot as well. Let's kind of pivot a little bit and talk about, your actual time as an athlete training with BASE. So like you mentioned, you came in, as a college athlete in summer of 2020. Really you were a college athlete with us all the way until the spring of this year of 2024. So we were 3.5, almost 4 years, of helping you train as a college athlete. From the time that you began till you finished up. Kind of talk about your experience with that. Maybe some things that you learned, maybe the quality of training that you were receiving, things like that. Just kind of talk about your experience there.
Yeah, I mean, as an athlete training here, like I said before, it was a complete wake up call because you never really get taught body control, and somebody who is 6'10" and is on the upper end and looks like kind of like a baby giraffe when they try and move from time to time, body control is the biggest thing. And so understanding how everything's supposed to work, how everything's supposed to move, what it's supposed to look like, understanding the feels and everything lifting, it just made everything so much easier when it came to playing because I was a lot stronger in the positions that I was getting in, pitching and throwing and everything, and I didn't even really realize it at the time because it's you get given it, you do your best to understand it, you ask questions, and you go from there, and then from the from remote and then coming back in and able to do coming back to in person. Now I got a chance to really ask questions, really elevate my knowledge and understand, okay, this is what we want, this is kind of how I need to go about my training. And even going into the Division 1 level, like going to lift and going to train and stuff, like those strength guys understand it, but if you also understand it, it just made it so much easier. And each and every summer, like strength wise, it went through the roof, uh, power wise through the roof, and it just made everything just so much better. Understanding this is what we're getting at, this is what we need, and it makes it easier when it comes to pitching because you use so many of the explosive movements. And so, that's kind of my big takeaway from training here for the past 3.5 years was everything we did was to better the performance on the field. And you don't even realize it unless you just take a step back and think about it. And so now being done, you take a step back and look at it, and it's just like, okay, we do these because I get here, and in this position, if I can get as strong and as powerful in this position, the sky's the limit when I step out onto the field.
You mentioned something that we kind of find ourselves mentioning, a decent amount when we're trying to kind of educate people on what we do, or when people come in and just walk in and they ask about, hey, what is this place? What do you guys do? Um, I say this all the time, but we're, BASE Sports Performance. So as you mentioned, the whole point of what we do is to help athletes perform at their sport, right? So, if you're a baseball player, you're a soccer player, softball, volleyball, basketball, golf, whatever, the program that you're going to receive is written to help you perform at that sport. It's not to help you become a better weightlifter or to help you, bench, squat, deadlift more, right? Like, yes, that might be part of the program, but that's not the goal. The goal is not just to add more weight, to these exercises. The goal is to make you a better performer of your sport. So when you mentioned that, that's something I obviously wanted to highlight because that's something that is our goal. And those being your words and that coming from you is obviously important because that is our whole goal. When we get each athlete in, we're trying to, help them with their goals. And, almost always they're coming in with the goal of, performing better at their sport. They may mention, hey, I want to get stronger, or I want to gain some weight, or I want to get faster. And us as coaches in the evaluation process, we're able to kind of dig a little bit deeper and ask, okay, what is the reason that you want to get stronger? What's the reason that you want to get faster? What's the reason that you need to gain some body weight? And that always comes down to, well, I think that's going to help me throw harder, or I think that's going to help me, run faster, or I think that's going to help me, be a little bit more durable on the court or on the field. And that's what it comes down to, is the performance of the sport. So anyway, I wanted to highlight that. I thought that was a good little nugget you gave us there. So we were talking about your internship before we pressed record here. Obviously, you started an internship a while ago. I think you are definitely the longest tenured intern we've ever had. You started in summer of 2021. You started in that summer internship. You pretty much went through a summer and a winter 21, a summer and a winter 22, and then a summer and a winter 23. So you pretty much had 6 internships, here at Base. So obviously that gave you a lot of experience with what we do. It probably educated you a good amount, as a coach and as an intern here. Kind of talk about, your experience as an intern here and kind of how that led you to understand and know that this is what you were going to want to do long term.
Yeah, I mean, starting an internship, uh, basically this summer right before I go into my first year at Memphis, and it was it's kind of a little bit of a wake up call just because I've never dealt with so many athletes at one time before, and each one of them moves differently, acts differently, wants different goals, and you know so the first year or so, learning the movements, and you and Walker kind of walking me through, like, this is the setup we want, this is why we want it, this is what we're looking for in this aspect of things. And it really elevated my knowledge heading into Memphis. And then that winter, same thing. Knowledge continued to grow as we brought in, another coach, and they bestowed their knowledge on me and kind of what they were looking for, how they see it, what is good, what's wrong, what can slightly be corrected in this one area. And then moving forward over the past 2 years, it's just become easier because I've gotten to know all the movements. A lot of the athletes elevate my knowledge, not just in a weight room setting, but on a pitching side through you and other coaches. And so it made it easier from that aspect of the internship because you get so many hands-on reps, because there are so many athletes, that the reps become easier and you don't have to think as much. You don't have to second guess yourself. You just know it like the back of your hand, and it just makes everything smoother. And then that, first summer, second summer, seeing smiles on faces, and, a bunch of our guys start committing and they come in just grinning ear to ear, excited that they committed to this big school, and, thanking everyone for helping them and whatnot. And then you see other kids who are, in awe that this, kid they train with is going to this big place. And fortunate enough this past winter to be around some of the pro guys as well, and seeing their faces light up too from time to time with some of their accomplishments that they were able to get. It's just a clear no decision that, hey, playing might not be the path that you want to go down. Coaching might be the option here, might be the better option for a longer career to stay in sports. And one of my coaches at Memphis said it best when we were talking to him about coaching and why he was coaching, and his introduction to us was he grew up under his dad, who was a big coach for high school and stuff like that, and he kind of got through high school and into college, and it was the same thing. He was like, I started seeing smiles, I started seeing that I was helping people and that they were happy based off what I was giving them knowledge wise and helping them reach their goals. And he goes, it's just an amazing feeling. And he goes, until I lose that feeling, I'm never going to stop coaching. And he goes, so instead of head coaching like I did for 12 odd years at Missouri, now I'm solely a pitching coach because my group's now smaller, which means I get even bigger smiles and accomplishments and a lot more joy out of knowing that I took this one dude from this to that and turned him into something just spectacular. And that, that sticks with me now. Now that I'm done in coaching, is, all the smiles, all the happiness, kid jumps 2 miles an hour or is lifting 20 pounds heavier than he was 2 weeks ago. seeing the smile and seeing them light up like I just did that, it was just a no brainer.
Yeah, that was one of the things that, when I was playing, some professional ball, obviously, uh, you got a long off season. You don't get paid during the off season, so obviously I was coming back home, doing a lot of pitching instruction, strength training, things like that, where I was helping a lot of the athletes, and honestly, it really really filled my cup, and kind of along the same lines as what you were just mentioning. When you see an athlete that you help guide and direct, where they need to go based off of your experience, and honestly most of the time probably mistakes that you had made in the past that you're learning from, and you're able to help that next athlete make a better decision or understand a little bit easier or earlier some certain things. That definitely lights you up, and it you know that's what you want to do. When you can help people and or help athletes, especially, you know, with things that you didn't have a lot of help with early on, throughout middle school or high school or even like college and pro athletes, like when we can provide that direction to them that we didn't get, that's what really, really, provides energy and fills your cup up. So obviously, again, like, you've been awesome, obviously, as a coach, which is why we took you on as an intern so many different times. And knew that was obviously going to be something that we were going to want to discuss whenever you did finish up, in your playing career. So, anyway, I think let's leave it there. I want to, we could talk all day on this, and we're definitely going to record some more podcasts discussing, different sorts of pitching, throwing, and training topics. But the point of this one, really, we just wanted to introduce you, as our, new assistant pitching director, even though you've been here 4 years, and full time for a couple of months now. But anyway, again, Hudson Ross coming on as the new assistant pitching director. Hudson, thanks for coming on today.
No problem.
Awesome. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it. Please post it, send it around, tag us. If there's something that you would like to hear about, if there's a certain topic you would like us to discuss in the future, shoot us a text, shoot us a DM, let us know. Until we talk to you in the next podcast, thanks. Thanks for listening to the show. If you guys got some value from this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. By sharing, you help us reach the most amount of athletes.